about 12,000 feet. And some nights we had to spend the night there, and oh, was it ever cold. I remember going out one time with the family, and I had to keep heating water all night, putting it in jars and putting it between my wife and the kids so that they could keep warm. And here's a place where we stopped overnight. Everybody slept together with the dogs and the chickens and the fleas and everything. All the muleteers and travelers were all in one room. So it wasn't much of a night, but at least there was some rest for the next day. And I had to sit in the saddle all day. And when we got to a place like that, my wife was so sore that I had to pick her up and take her out of the saddle. These were taken by Alliance Missionary because we did not have a camera at the time. And this is the very trail and the mules that they used and we used to go into the jungle. I'm sorry that this somehow does not come out clear. Bridges, there are many bridges because we're in the headwaters of the Amazon and all the water comes down. I believe this is the bridge where I got scared because uh, my wife and Janice were their horse just caught about a half an inch of his hind hoof on the edge of that thing. I thought that they were going down into that rushing river. But God always took care of us all the way through. Many a dangers, but we thank Him that He had that promise for us, that He goeth before us. There are many, many dangers. Here's a very sharp rock, and there's no way of going around it. And down below, about 250 feet, is a rushing river. Many a mule had rolled down that river because it did not have the footing to get on it. This is a long bridge. It's 100 meters, so it'll be 300 and some feet long. Many times it would swing back and forth, back and forth. Somebody would have to lead the mule and another one hold the tail by the tail to keep it from swaying and go over. There you saw a mule that went headfirst in the mud. Here we are in a tumble with J. Christian Weiss here helping to load up the mule. Here he is trying to get on. He was with Back to the Bible later, but he was our president, and he and I were buddies for many years. And I thank the Lord for a man of God like he was. And then we get on our horses, and here we come to the headhunter Indians.
Keep talking.
Yeah, here we are. We came to Chupienza. This is a Christian missionary line station. These are the headhunters that the Lord has sent us to work among them. Mr. Moffat was a great man of God, and we enjoyed his fellowship. He was our nearest neighbor. Then between him and our station in Sakua, we had this bamboo bridge, and here's a former missionary that was there at the time, and he came to meet us, and he's crossing this bamboo bridge. We had to carry everything over the bridge, and some of the women went on their hands and knees because they were afraid. And then we had to pull the horses through the river because the river was too swift. And this is the big mule with Ella and Janice on it. And then night he came to carry Janice, I mean. And here we are having lunch along the trail. And then we arrive in Sukua, and the man with the beard is Jose Andrade that was with the government and he came to our place. And for 3.5 years, he was with us. He gave his heart to the Lord and became a great missionary to their own people. Then we took off from Sukua to go to Makuma. And here's the Upano River. You can see how treacherous it is because how the canoe. We have to stop the canoe between two rapids. Otherwise, if it hit the rapids, people would perish. Coming back, the river was flooded, and all they could do was take one passenger across at a time. This is the Upano where our Indians uh, came to school, and then you can hear that. Here, you can hear some of their songs talking. This is old chief, a witch doctor, another witch doctor, and we had quite a few of those around, but we thank the Lord that some had given their hearts to the Lord in the meantime. This is the way the children were brought up if they lived to be of any age, because babies died there very frequently because of the diseases. And after we came with medicine, we were able to help, and the population grown. Here now you'll hear the witch doctors. This is what they are doing. Here they're making their brew and they're singing, chanting over the person that is sick. Here you can hear the way they're chanting. They're sucking on the sick man. And they keep on. And a man is calling out there. He says, come on, get it out of him. Wynia Suruska. Yeah. No. The women are wailing for the dead. We could hear that out in the mountains many a morning. And then here they're making their chicha. This is a drink that they chew up the yucca, which is sort of like a potato, starchy, and then they spit it in those earthen pots and let it ferment for a few days before they start drinking it. Then they have to doll up for the feast. Here you can see this woman all getting dolled up, ready for their feast where they're going to start dancing, and they carry on for at least 3 days. As long as their drink lasts, they'll have the feast. These two do not know each other, and so they're being introduced by the other guy to see if they can be friends or not. And so the other man knew the two, and through all this chanting, they find out whether they can be friends or not, and they find out that they can be friends because there was no killing in their ancestors before this. So combing out the head and getting ready for the dancing of the feast. Here they're getting all lined up. Here it is. This is the master of ceremonies. That's a real Indian head that was slain in Peru and brought over back to Ecuador. All getting lined up, and then the master of ceremonies, he has to put narcotics in the nostrils of the men that were the killers, because they say that the evil spirits might get into their body through their nostrils, and that narcotic that they blow, it's tobacco juice and then juices from some vines that are highly potent, and that keeps the spirits away. They're constantly in fear of spirits, always conscious of the evil spirits among them. This is also put on for us, which is not their regular dance, and so they were not in fear. But if they were out in their woods where they were having their feast, there'd be guards all around them because they're afraid that the enemy might come and retaliate for the killing that they had done. It's the way the drums keep beating and they keep going back and forth. The head on a stick. They're always talking to the head, how foolish you were. We are the strong people, you are the weak people. See, we got the victory over you. And that's the way they went back and forth, all in there, who knows how many years behind. You can see the long-haired men, where these men that are dancing around that pole have just as long hair as that man, as that head over there, but they got it all fixed up and they can keep it concealed pretty well. Every now and then they'll stop and put that narcotic in their nostrils as they keep on dancing away. Sometimes it seemed like it was impossible for us to be able to reach these people with the gospel, and of course it was. Some of these women had given themselves to the Lord after this picture has been taken, which we would have never gotten it before. Here they are pointing their head toward the sun, and they have a ritual they go through, chanting. And from these people, as I said, how we were going to reach them, we reached them through these kids coming to school and teaching them the Word of God and the daily life, that they were with us constantly. And they came across this river. And just before this, my son was on it. And many a time have we crossed that river to treat people and to help. And from over across that river, many of these kids came to school. And it was through them that we were able to teach the Word so that they could understand the difference between the evil and the good. And we believe that truly through one of the boys that had accepted the Lord, that was a TB patient and he died, he actually said he saw the angels with Christ coming down for him just as he was going to die. I prayed for him just a few minutes before. And from there on, he talked that night. The night before, he talked all night and telling All the people, he didn't want the witch doctors there, and that there was Christ was in heaven, there were angels and so on. He didn't believe in evil spirits anymore, and we believe that that was the eye-opening of the hearts of those people. Here we have a two-toed sloth, just the laziest animal in the world. And there's our son Jim and his friend Ayui. Jim is now with MAF, rebuilding aircraft and working with aircraft, and they spent 10 years in Brazil. And then we're going to have a float every year on the Ecuadorian Day, as they say, here like 4th of July. We'd have to go up to the village, and there with the Catholic schools and the fiscal schools or government schools, we had to get together and spend the day there, and the kids have to show off what they have learned in the different schools. And so we made this float. One year, next year, a tractor came in after we made the airstrip bigger, and so we had the float with the tractor. This is one of our Indian boys that is teaching Ecuadorian military exercises, which that bearded fellow that you saw way back there had taught them because he was a military man. They had to work a few hours a day for their clothing. When they came, they generally came naked, and we gave them the first set of clothes. But after that, they had to work enough to buy their own clothes. Here you heard the boy reading. He's still reading a book there. And then you heard them singing. So that they could learn faster than we could have ever learned their language. They liked fun. And here on that their 4th of July, we'd say they had this tug of war. And they didn't have it just that easy. They had a pit with water in it, as you'll see it. There was my boy, Jim. He liked to have gotten into it too. But they just had a lot of fun showing off in front of the girls how strong they were. Almost acted like American kids. And then this was the first Christmas for the girls. Our church in Minneapolis had sent gifts for each one of the kids. Not a goiter, we don't know, just a growth, but we had the parents take her out to the city and have it amputated. My wife treated this girl for dysentery and all, got her much better, but her mother would not take care of her. This boy was brought to us, and they say he's going to die anyway, and they thought that he'd die in our school, but he didn't die in our school. And this is a tongue cancer that came to us way too late. She had a tooth pulled by the nun, and from that, somehow, the cancer came out in the tongue. Nobody knows just how. Many ulcers there. This little kid is going to get a shot, so my wife gives him some jelly beans, and therefore the shot doesn't hurt so much. We had to do a lot of medical work. These are all TB suspects, and we had a doctor come in and show me how to run an X-ray after we got one. This guy came too late, and so we took X-rays of those people. This is the verse that the Lord had given me when I first went in to the jungle. As I prayed, I didn't know which way to turn, what to do, and that verse He gave me, I have chosen to set my name there. Here's our president of the mission, G. Christian Weiss, had come in, and we talked over the possibility of building an airstrip. Then I took him from Sukua to Makuma on the horse trail, and then we had to cross the rivers and up. Took us 4 days to get to Makuma, where Ernest Johnson had started a mission station. And we had started then making the airfield in Sukua in 1946. I think it was in January 1946. After Mr. Weiss visited us, we decided to go ahead and build an airstrip. And at about the very time that the Lord had spoken to me about building an airstrip, it was just like a voice came to me when I was walking on the trail there one evening, just contemplating the mountains and the skies. And the Lord, in that quietness, spoke to me and says, Mike, build an airstrip here. There we are, Frank Brown. We were finishing up the last little bit before the plane arrived. But it took quite a bit of work. People came voluntarily, they worked and helped us get that airstrip made. Even some soldiers came and helped us a couple days. But my wife had to do the cooking for 30 to 50 men every day, give them one meal on a little 2.5 by 2.5 stove. But I don't know how she did it, but she did it. And then after our first furlough, we came back, and the government allotted us about a $5,000 so we could go ahead and build the airstrip bigger, widen it out, and lengthen it more. I wouldn't take the money, but I had the government do the paying. But we made up the payrolls ourselves and took care of it. And then our plane arrived, and my wife was the first passenger to get out of there. What a great joy that was, because she was sick and for months and she could not get out over the trail. And this was the lifesaver, and that's why she's still with us today. The Lord is always gracious. Then Dr. Epp and Mrs. came to visit us when they came to Shell to dedicate the hospital in memorial to his father. And they wanted to come into Sakua because they supported us for many years. And they said this was the highlight of their whole trip when they came to see the Indians. And then the Indian kids crowned them with crown and baked the cake and all that. And I know from every furlough that we'd see them, they'd always talk about it. This is the hospital at Shelmera. This is where MAF has its headquarters. And so from all over the jungle, they can bring patients to this hospital here. Dr. Epp there, and Dr. What was his name? Roberts was a speaker, and these are the people that worked in the hospital. And they always get these sheepskins. And then after 15 years alone, Ralph and Marion Stoop and their children came to Sakua, and I turned over the boys' school over to them. And that was the first help that we had in the years. And then kids loved their Christmas presents no matter where. And these boys, after they'd been in school and went back to started their communities because everybody lived separate. Everybody was afraid of everybody. But through the school, these boys went back and they started preaching and teaching their people. And there had been a lot of turnaround. And then they came back and said, we've all preached out. We need more teaching. So we asked the Alliance missionary, Mr. Moffat, to come. And for 2 weeks, he taught them day after day. And they went back to the jungles to keep on preaching again. Those people you saw, they came on their Cadillacs to church. And you see, through the boys, through the school, then these little places started. This is Kangaimi, where Roger and Barbara Udarian were and started this work. Before the schools there wasn't ever a group of even 10 people hardly. But after the schools, you see these boys went back and they got their friends and their relatives together, and the fear started breaking down. And then they asked me to come and show them gospel films and preach to them. So I'd spend 3 nights in each little outstation, as we call them. These girls didn't have any dolls, but they had their little puppies that they could love. And through this school, we were going to start with 7 boys, but the Lord sent us 27. And here we have the great number of kids after a few years, how they have come. We started conferences. First of all, we had a conference in our station, Sakua. And this is an Indian boy went to pick up the Indians that came from Makuma to Sakua. Then they built their own airstrip. They started their own little community called a commune, and they wanted to have the conference in their own place. So uh, they had the airstrip finished, and when we went there, they built a little church and thought that would be big enough. And when we got there, Indians started coming from all over, and we had over 300. And then we had to call an SOS to the Alliance and Shell if we could use their tent, and that's what they brought in. He was a son of a witch doctor that gave his heart to the Lord, one of the first ones in our school, and it was through him that all this work begun back there. They took out parcels of land, so many acres each, and then I worked with the government to get the titles for their lands. This is the conference. This is the son of a witch doctor here. They did all their cooking and everything. We were just onlookers over there. We had the chairman of the Alliance and also chairman of GMU there. And our daughter was only 2 years old, Ginger. Here's a dedication of a little church that Huanga, the son of the witch doctor, had built. Great sacrifice he went through to build this little church, but it was too small even to hold the prayer meetings. And our mission director was dedicating that little chapel. This is the pilot's wife. Then, of course, after we had built the airstrip bigger, the big planes came in. Here's the president of Ecuador, Velasco Ibarra. He came to see what I was doing, and I had plenty of lumber to show him what I had cut up. And then, a couple of years later, we had Ponce, and the bishop was there too. And so we had these dignitaries come in. Both of them signed our guest books. And then here are the three big ones, as they called us when they saw this. The bishop, myself, and the president. You see why we don't have a Cadillac in the jungle. People in a Bible class in Kansas City saw that old Jeep. And they, after we got back to the field, they called the mission and asked if we couldn't use a new Jeep. And they bought me a brand new Jeep with a winch and everything, which was a great blessing to us. I was trying to teach the people that if they used their heads, they wouldn't have to use their backs. We're loading these stones for our foundation for a new church up in the village. We had a church in the mission station, but we needed a church up in the village, and that's what we are doing here now. Hauling these rocks, and we got the church put up over there. We had a lot of trouble because enemies wanted to take the land away from me. This is the way all lumber had to be sawed in the jungle. And for a church, it took us 2 years to get a few boards cut to build a church. And when we were on our furlough, a young man in our church had said if he could do something for us. And I said, well, if I could have a sawmill, one of these Montgomery Ward sawmills. And they got together their Bible class and Sunday schools, and they got me this Ward sawmill. But I had to build it a whole lot stronger than what was on paper. And the Bible class in Kansas City got me that diesel engine, but it wasn't strong enough to for the sawmill. I had to get a truck engine to use the sawmill with. But we use this for light plant and for planing and edging and all that other work. That plant ran almost 24 hours a day at times. The wood is very heavy in the jungles, and we're using a winch here and all the manpower that we could get to roll that log on. It seems a little rotten, but what has rotted, the rest will never rot, and no termites ever get into it or any bugs. So we always took every inch we could get. If you want a name of that, that's an Indian name called Pichichi. I don't know what else it'll be. It's not a hardwood. It cuts very easily. It goes through like through cheese, and cuts very straight and never warps. Other woods warp right in the saw and it's hard cutting. Cedar over there, unless the teeth are good and sharp, you can hardly get the saw to go through it because it's just like wool on the teeth. I had put that thing around the edge there because people in that country do not know what it means, uh, what danger means. And I kept people away from getting their feet or hands cut in the saw. And for all the years and all the lumber that I had sawed with green Indians helping me, never anybody even got hurt as much as a black fingernail. This is our oldest son. became in orthopedics, but before he came in orthopedics, he built a chicken house for his mother in the jungles. So you see, he knows how to handle the saw. And Jimmy, here he came out with a good ice cold orange juice. But he too had to learn to use an axe and cut trees. And then on our patriotic day, I decided with some of the village people to go to the capital of our province, which was 14 miles away over a horse trail. And here we are going to the capital. We finally arrived after 6.5 hours over the horse trail as the captain of the police and his wife. A little joke there. She said she was an atheist, and in one place the precipice was right alongside of her. We had only about a foot of leeway for the tires, and she started calling on the saints. And I tapped her on the shoulder. I said, "Lady, you're riding with Saint Michael now." And we're going down the slowest gears and brakes down that steep hill. You can see we couldn't make the curve. We had to back up twice to get around the curve. This is just the horse trail. Here's the governor. So I'm chasing him down the hill. I was trying to show them that if they got together and really got after the government, that they could make a road so that we'd be connected between the capital and the other villages. And in a few years, it did pay. It did come out. And we did get what we were looking for at the time. This is a little village that wanted me to come and show films and preach to them, but it was almost impossible to get there. And so the pilot, MEF pilot, and I would fly over and show them where they could build an airstrip in a pasture. And there they built the airstrip, and that was our first landing of the little plane on that airstrip. And I spent several days preaching and teaching the word to those people. Here, after we got the summer, we were able to build the homes because by the time we got these homes built, our old house, the termites ate it completely, and it was my wife fell through the ceiling one time. The boards all broke. So we were able to saw up lumber and build all these. This was a guest house made of bamboo, and we even had Clarence Jones and his wife for 2 weeks in that thing. They really enjoyed it. And this was the kitchen for the school kids and caretaker of the kids. And then our boys' school here. We had just butchered a big bull, so drying the hide out. All these boards were cut after we got the sawmill. This is a Wayusa tree, which Paraguay tea they call it. And Ralph Stuke built his house about the same time that I did mine. I had all the lumber prepared for him, so he built his own. And this is our little daughter, Ginger. She was our Yapa, which means to boot. After our last one, Joanne, was born, she came 10 years less 1 day. And this is her first birthday, having her little cake in her hand. Going down the hill. She can do pretty well for 1 year old. And this is Bobby Hart's monkey. We were taking care of it while they were on furlough. But he didn't want to get too close to Gingy. She wanted him down, but he wouldn't obey. These little kids had to learn to work for their clothes likewise, so they were shelling corn as they couldn't handle a machete very well. Some people said, well, do pineapples grow on trees? So we had to take a little pineapple patch to show people that pineapples didn't grow on trees. Building a clinic. Many a person was saved here. And we had these little huts here for the people that were sick that had to be treated for 8, 10 days or 2 weeks. And they could come and live in those little huts where my wife would give them the shots that they needed for TB or for something else. Then we had a community project here. Once a month we'd get together to try to fix up a road between communities and so on. Even women's live in the jungle. This is our mission station when we went there. There were only one house and a shed, and that was after the sawmill we were able to get all these homes and church and everything else built. The dark trees that you see around the compound are grapefruit and orange trees. We had lovely oranges and grapefruit there. And you see, I built the airfield and we turned it right into our yard, so we had airplane service right to the door. This is a little bit of the village. And then we're up in Quito, and here's our daughter Janice graduating at the Alliance Academy in Quito. This dorm was finished, and of course, the kids from the jungles and from the coast, different ones, would come here and have dorm parents and then attend school from here. Ginger seems to be in a lot of pictures, doesn't she? This is Mary Lou McCulley's after her husband was killed by the Aucas. She built this guest house, but then her boys were getting big and her brother told her to come and he would help her raise the boys. This is the last day of school at the Alliance Academy. There's Mary Lou McCulley, one of the widows. Ginger loves her coat. There's Jimmy, our boy. And then here's Jim Stook. He loves the last lick of ice cream. Barb Udarian, another widow. And there's Marge Saint in the pink. Then we're among the Highland Indians called the Quichua Indians, which are the remnants of the Incas. I took this picture several years back. They went to church and got their blessing. The priest gave them permission to go and have their riotous living. I showed this film to them after they became Christians. And oh, it was fun. They would point and say, look at me when I was a pagan. He said, look at me when I was a pagan. Oh, we got such a bang at it. This is a thrashing machine that Noah used in Noah's time. You know, it says in the Psalms and other places, do not muzzle the ox that treaded out the corn. And these Quichua Indians, the remnants of the Incas, lived in these little parcels. They really didn't live, they just barely existed. Because all the good land was taken by the landlords and by the Catholic Church. But afterwards, Galo Plaza turned things around and the land was divided and people have their land now, which they can grow some things. Here's Wim's Lib again. The donkey, the man, and the woman, they all carry the same load, and they go humming as they go down the road. If you look good right straight across, you'll be able to see a snow-capped mountain. That's Sangay Oriente right across. Now, this is a mission station that the mission had bought and put up, and we had missionaries in this place for several years. But the hardness of the hearts of the people there, and the drunkenness, and their tires were cut, their horses were cut, and finally the mission sold the property, saying we better sell it before somebody gets killed. And about 5 years after they sold it, the Lord opened up the hearts of those people, and all through these valleys, everybody turned to Christ. And a great big church is built there on that property. So the Lord blessed the efforts of the missionaries that they had to put up, even with their lives. But thank God nobody was killed by them. And so the drunkenness ceased, and all the reveling and all the feasts had ceased, and they rejoiced, and they built their homes from the mud. Now they put up cement block homes. There's Mount Chimborazo, but it doesn't seem to show up in this picture here. Now this is where Mrs. Woodward, a missionary of ours, had labored for 50 years and never saw a true convert. Some professions, but no possessions. And after her departure to glory, the Lord opened up the hearts of these people in such a marvelous way. We had 1,200 in this gathering here. They asked me to come and show gospel films, and they did all their own preaching and singing. I was there with my camper selling literature and Bibles to them. Then Mrs. Woodward had translated the New Testament, complete New Testament, but she had no Indian help because there were no Christians. So after many of these became Christians, they says, well, we got to have it more clearly for people. So some of our newer missionaries with the Indian Christians got together, and they went through the whole New Testament. Mrs. Woodward had translated and retranslated and made it more with the language of the people. Now that they understood some of the spiritual meanings of things. And this was the dedication of that New Testament there. They think there were over between 5,000 and 6,000 Indians. Now, in that place that I told you the missionaries are almost killed, here's a baptismal service on a Sunday morning. They baptized 72 converts that morning. And after we had a service, 20 accepted the Lord. And at night we were going to have a service in the church. But they said there were too many Indians coming. He says, Don Miguel, we'll have to set up outside. We had between 1,200, 1,500 Indians outside that night, and another 20 accepted the Lord. This is way up the Samora River. And here I'm crossing the Samora River with my Jeep. Out of the back of this camper, I had sold over $3,000 worth of literature, and that's all in a penny, nickel, dime. So, I sold a lot of literature, and it was all in the jungles. This is a major of the Ecuadorian Air Force. He loved to go with me on trips and sell literature and preach for me. And that outcome of that trip to the capital, this is what happened here, see? The U.S. Air Force came in and brought machinery in, and we started making roads between the villages. I was in this plane when it took off.